Hello guys, welcome back to this amazing lesson. In this lesson we'll be discussing working with APIs and JSON data. In modern application, APIs, which is known as what application programming interfaces, acts as a bridge that allow different software systems to communicate with each other. Most APIs exchange data in a lightweight format which is called what JSON, and this JSON is known as what JavaScript object what notation, which is human readable and machine friendly. In this lesson, we will learn how to work with APIs and what JSON. They are actually crucial for analysts who want to fetch a what live data set, web developer that what integrate services like payment, weather, social media, and so on. Software engineers building what scalable apps. Now let's actually see the meaning of or definition of this API now. Now we said API is a set of rules and protocols that allow one application to interact with what each other. Now for the type of the API, now we have the REST API, we have the SOAP, and we have the what GraphQL API. Now for the type of this API, now we have the what REST API, which is what representational state transfer. Is most common and what it uses HTTP method. For the SOAP API now, that one is more strict but is what XML based. For the GraphQL now, GraphQL API, it is actually what flexible queries. Now let me scroll down and let's see the what concept in this REST API now. Now for the concept in this REST API now, we have the endpoint, which is the what URL where the resources is what actually located. For the request now, that is what we actually what sent in. That's what method plus parameters. For the response, what the API is sending back to us as what as the output, which is what often known as what JSON, or actually comes in form of what JSON. And for the HTTP method now, we have the get, we have the post, we have the put or patch or delete. For the HTTP method now, for the get, it retrieve data. For the post, it send new data. For the put or patch now, that means it actually update existing data. For the delete now, this actually what remove data. Now let me scroll down now. Let's see what JSON is all about. Now this JSON, we said what for full meaning of this JSON is what JavaScript object notation. Now is a way to what to store data in a key value pairs. Now it actually look like a what like Python what dictionaries. Now the parentheses that actually what used to bring out the output of the data, or what we actually sent in now, it looks like what Python dictionary. This is the symbol here now, and sorry, this can contain what nested list or what or object. We've actually talked about this list and dictionary in the what previous lessons. Now let's actually see some examples on this what API and what and JSON data now. Now let's see how we can actually what bring API to what to pandas now. To bring an API to what to pandas now, first thing I will show the API in what in browser. This is the link I'll be making use of now. I'll copy this link. Now copy, I'll come to my browser now. I'll click on the what in the new tab and I'll paste this link. You can see it now. I'll hit on enter. You can see now this is the back end what this is the back end of the API now. Yeah, this is the raw API data. So it is structured what structured JSON, but it is easily to what analyze directly. But now I will now copy this now. I'll copy this link. This is the I just want to actually what show us this what the back end now. Let me actually scroll down so that we can see everything now. You can see it now. This is the whole of the what the whole of the API now, the raw API. So we'll now work on it now. So let me come back to where we are actually what writing our query now. I'll hit here. I'll now come here. Now the first thing I will now do is that I'll fetch the data in Python. How will I fetch this data in Python? I'll come here. Make sure you have an internet whenever you want to what see the link for the what for the raw API. Now I'll come here, fetch what? The data in what? In Python. I'll hit on enter. Now I'll come down here. Let me scroll down so that we can see everything perfectly well. Now come here. I will now import request. That's the first thing. Import what? Request. Control enter. You can see now. I will now continue. I'll now bring out my URL now. The URL now equals what? The URL equals this link now. This is the URL. I will now copy this now. I'll copy this. Control C, copy, and I'll paste it here now. Now I will now remove what? I'll put it in quotes. In quotes and in what? And in quotes. So that's my what? That's my URL. Now the next thing, I'll bring out my response. Response equals what? Request dot what? Get, open parenthesis. What do you want to get? The URL. That means get this URL now. You should bring out the API from there. Now get URL. I'll now run this, control enter. You can see now no error. Let's proceed. The next thing, I will now print open parenthesis, double quotes. Now status code, double column, double quotes, comma. Now response dot status underscore code, close parenthesis. Now print now, control enter. You can see now this is the what? Status code. So this status code actually means what? Successful. If you have this status code now, it means what? 200. It means what? Successful. So our status code is actually what? Successful. But if we have like 404, 500, these are errors now. Now let's continue. I will now come here and now say data equals what? Equals response. This response now dot JSON. We want in a JSON, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, control enter. You can see now, see successful. Now the first thing I will now do is that I want to print what? One user. So we've actually convert here now. What we did here now, we actually convert the JSON to what? To Python list or dictionary. And what we actually did here now is what? Is to determine the what? The status code, which is this 200 now. The next thing I will now do is that what? I will now hit on enter. I will now print open parenthesis. Now double quote, first record. I want to see the first record, double column, double quote. Now comma, data. I'll make use of this parenthesis, 0, close this parenthesis, close this back, control enter. You can see it now. This is the first record. This is the ID, the name, the username, the email, the address, the suit, the address. Okay, this is the complete address, the city, the zip code, the geographical location, the latitude and the longitude, the phone number, the website, the organization, the website, the company, and so on and so forth. You know, when we want to bring out data in Python, now it will start from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So that's why we actually what? Fetch out the what? The first record with what? 0. As long as I said 1 now, so it will actually change here now. That's 1. If I print this now, control enter. Let's wait for it. You can see it now. ID 2 and so on. So it will actually change, but it will start from 0, followed by 1, followed by 2, 3, and so on. Now what we actually did now, we've actually fetched the same data now, but Python understands it in this way as what? As a list of what? Of dictionary. Bringing it out this way, you can see now it actually brings it out as a list of what? Dictionary. Now, how can we actually load this data into what? Pandas now. That's what we want to do now. To load it into what? Pandas. Now, I'll now scroll down. I'll come here. I'll now say load what? Into pandas. I'll hit on enter. To load into pandas, I will now say what? Import what? Pandas as pd. I'll run this now, control enter. You can see now, no error. Let's proceed. And I'll come here and I'll say df underscore what? Users underscore users equals pd dot data frame open parenthesis. Now this data, now I'll now bring it here now, data, close parenthesis. If I run this now, control enter, you can see no error. I'll now print now, print. What am I printing? Open parenthesis. I'll now print this df underscore user now, df underscore users dot head. I want to see the first 5. Open parenthesis, close parenthesis. Now close this second parenthesis now that will open first. Control enter. You can see now. Let me scroll down now. You see this will be 0 to 4. You can see 0 to 4. This is the column ID, and this is the other ID or the column ID. This is the name, the username. These are what? 0 to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the first what? First 5. The email, the what? The address. Now the website. You can see that this is kind of different from it actually, the way it actually bring it out when we were fetching the data here in what? In Python. That is actually listed out in a what? Dictionary. Load it in what? In pandas. Now you can see the way it's actually what? Bring out our data. This look more what? More beautiful in this way. So it's actually bring it out for us now as what? Like a table. Now if I now want to see 10 now, let's say like 10 of it now, I'll now say 10. Now control enter. You can see it now. Let me scroll down. So this will now be 0 to 9 for everything. So you can see everything perfectly well. It actually shows everything well. So that's how to load it into what? Into pandas and what? And fetch the data in Python. Now another thing is, how can we actually what? Extract what? Let's say nested field. Now how can we do that? Now let me scroll down. Now let's come here. Let's say extract what? Nested field. Nested fields. I'll hit on enter. I will now say, I'll say df underscore what? Users. Now this parenthesis, double quote, city, close double quote, close this parenthesis. Now equals what? Equals df underscore users. Now open this parenthesis, double quote. I'll bring out the address. I want to use the address. Now close double quote, close this parenthesis. Now I'll now say dot apply. Now apply what? Open parenthesis. I'll use this what? Lambda. Now x, x, double column. Now x again. Now what's the x I want to use here now? Double column, city, close double quote, close this parenthesis, now. Now I will now hit on enter. I'll now say df underscore users, open this parenthesis, double quote, company underscore name. I want to bring out the company underscore name, double quote, close this parenthesis, equals what? df underscore what? Users. Now open this parenthesis, double quote, company, double quote, close the quote again. Now close this parenthesis, dot apply, open parenthesis. I'll use my lambda again. Sorry. Okay, I'll use my lambda. I want to see. Okay, I can see it doesn't bring out it in green. That's why I'm checking again. Okay, so that it won't give us error. X double column. Now X again. I'll now make use of this parenthesis. Double quote. I'll use name this time around. Double quote. Close this parenthesis. We all those what? All those columns I'm making use of is here. We have the, if I scroll up now, we have the what? Company, we have the name here. You can see it. We have the what? We have the city, the column for the city. We have the city, we have the address. So let's continue. Name. Now I'll now close this parenthesis. I'll close this parenthesis now. I'll hit on enter. I will now print. Print. What do I want to print? Open parenthesis. df underscore users underscore users. Double parenthesis of this now. Double quote. I want to bring out the ID. Close the quote. Comma. Now double quote name. Those things I make use of. Name. Double quote. Comma. Double quote city. Double quote. Comma. Now I'll bring out the company name now. Double quote company underscore name. Close double quote. Close these two parentheses. I'll now say dot head. Dot head. Open parenthesis. Close parenthesis. Close this parenthesis. Control enter. You can see it now. This is how to extract a what? A nested field. So these are the columns we actually what? Extracted. This is the ID, the name, the city, and their company underscore name. So assuming I said what? Let's say like 10 now. Let's print this. Control enter. You can see now it will actually give us what? 10 of what? Of the data. So you can see it now. That's 0 to 9. Now the next example we'll be looking at is what? JSON from what? Users API. Now each user each represents a person. Now like a customer, employee, or account. And the field that actually comprises include what? The ID, which is what? Which is the unique identifier, the name, the email, address. The address serves as what? The nested what? JSON. Why post now? Post represents a message or article or content created by a what? By a user. It normally comprises of what? The user ID, the title, the body. Now that user ID now will serve as the what? The author that links to the what? The user ID. The ID will serve as the what? The unique ID of the post. While the title is what? Post what? Title. And the body is what? Post content. Based on their key difference now relationship based on the relationship now, a user can have what? Can have many posts, but a post belongs to what? Belongs to one user. When it comes to what? The user, I said a user can have what? Many posts, but in the case of the post now, a post can belong to a what? To one user. When it comes to relationship now, when it comes to the user now, what normally links them together is what? Is the ID. But when it comes to post now, what normally links them what? Is the user ID. So when it comes to what? Link between them now, when it comes to the user, what normally links is what? Is the ID. But when it comes to post now, what normally linked there is what? Is the user ID. I've actually said what they actually what? Represent. Now for the user now, the user represent what? The customer, the employee, or what? System user. Why the post actually represents what? The post is based on what? Content created by what? Users, like blog what? Posts, comments, messages, and so on. Now let's see the example now. Let's say JSON from what? From user API. Now I will now bring out this parenthesis first. Sorry, this parenthesis first. I will hit on enter. I will now come here. I'll bring out this parenthesis. I'll hit on enter now. I will now say double quote ID. Close double quote, double column. Now 1. I'll hit on enter. Double quote. I want to make use of name. Double quote, double column. Now for the name now, let's say I want to use double quotes. Let's say Swift, Swift Taylor, Swift Taylor. That's what I want to use. Close double quotes. Now, comma. I'll hit on enter now. I'll now come here. I'll hit on my tab button again. I'll now double quote. I'll now bring out I want to make use of email. Email. Close double quote. Double column. Now, for the email now, let's say what? Let's say Swift Taylor or at what? At prayer dot business double quote. I'll put a comma. I'll hit on enter. I want to make use of the address again. Address now. Close double quote. Double column. Now, when it comes to this address now, I'll use this parenthesis now. I will now bring it out. Double quote. Street. Now, double quote. Double column. I'll now what? Bring out this street. I'll now say, let's say double quote. Let's say coolers light. Double quote. Now, I'll put a comma here. I will now bring out the city. Close double quote. Now, for the city now, I'll bring out the double column again. Double quote. Let's say Greenwich. Now, close double quote. Now, I'll put a comma. Double quote. I want to make use of zip code. Now, close double quote. Double column. Now, for the zip code now, let's say double quote 9929988 hyphen. Now say 3874 double column. Now, I'll now close this parenthesis now. I'll put a comma. I'll hit on enter. Now, I will now come back. Double quote. Now, the next thing I want to make use of is what? Is the company now. Company. Just like I'm bringing out what? Information now from the API. Like I copied this from the what? From the API. Now, I will now bring out this parenthesis again. For the company now, it will have a name. Double quote. Now, name of the company first. Close double quote. Double column. Now, for the company, let's say for the company name now, I will now say double quote. Now, Roma Guerra. I'll make use of hyphen. Corona. Close double quote. Now, after the company name now, I'll now close this parenthesis here. I will now hit on enter. Now, after that, I will now close this first parenthesis now that I opened now. For this, I will now close this. Now, the next thing, I will now proceed. I'll put a comma. I still want to bring one more information. I will hit on enter again. I will now come with this what? This parenthesis this time around. Now, I'll hit on enter. For the ID now, I'll start with ID. Sorry. Double quote. ID. Close double quote. Double column 2. Now, put a comma. I'll hit on enter. Double quote. Name. Close double quote. Double column. Now, let's say this time around, let's say Evelyn. Now, Owell. Let's say Evelyn Owell. Close double quote. I'll put a comma. I'll hit on enter. I want to make use of email. Double quote. Email. Close double quote. Double column. Now, the email now say double quote. Shana at Melissa.tv. Close double quote. Now, I'll put a comma. I'll hit on enter. I want to bring out the address. Double quote. Address. Close double quote. Close double column now. I will now bring out this parenthesis again. Don't forget. Now, I'll bring out the street. close double quote now. Now double column. Now for the street name, oh, I didn't put T here. Close double quote, close double column. Now I'll now say double quote now. Victor Plains. That's the street name I want to make use of. Now close double quote. I'll put a comma. Now the next one, I'll now come here, double quote. I want to make use of the city. Close double quote, double column. Now for the city, I'll now say what? Wisconsinburg. Soki. Now Borg. Now double quote. I'll put a comma. I want to make use of zip code. Double quote, zip code, close double quote. Now double column. For the zip code, I'll now say double quote now. That's, let's say, 90566. Now hyphen 7771 double quote. Now I'll now close this parenthesis. Now put a comma. I'll hit on enter. Now the next thing I want to bring out is the what? Is the company. Double quote, company, close double quote. Now double column. I'll now bring out this parenthesis again. Now double quote, name, close double quote, double column. Now double quote. I'll now say deck. Oh. Now hyphen what? Christ. Now double quote. That's the company name. Now close the parenthesis. I will now what? I will now hit on enter. Now let me scroll down now so that we can see everything very well. Okay. Now I will bring my cursor here. I will hit on enter. I'll now close this what? This parenthesis now. The first one I opened here now. Now after that, I'll put a comma. I'll hit on enter. I will now put a dot here. Now I'll hit on enter. I'll now close this first parenthesis. Now if you look up now, that we first of all opened here. I'll come here. I'll hit on enter. I'll close that parenthesis now. Now I will now run this now. Control enter. Now let's actually see what we have now. Now reason why we have this error is that I didn't actually put a comma here. Now let me put a comma here now. Let's run this now. Control enter. Let's see what we have. You can see it now. Look at how the API actually look like now. This is it in a JSON format now. Look at the ID, the name, the email, the address, the city, the zip code, the company name, and assuming we have like 10 IDs now. This is the way we'll bring it out for us. Like the first ID, the second ID, third, fourth, fifth, and so on and so forth. Now this is how we can actually bring it out manually. That is just like copying an API and bringing it out manually. So this is the actual API call now that returns a list of many, such as JSON objects. Now when we call the API now, we can get a list of rows in each in a JSON format. That is why we normally load them into pandas, to see them as a table. Now the way we actually load here now, you can see the way we actually load it. Let me scroll up, sorry. Now the way we actually load, okay, not here. Now let me scroll up again. Now the way we actually load it in a pandas here. So that is the way we can actually load it manually into a pandas too. If I want to load this into pandas now, now like this place I actually put here now, it's not actually compulsory. You may not actually put it so that it won't give you error. Now if you want to load this into pandas now, I will now come here. I will import pandas as pd. Now I'll run this, control enter. You can see now no error. Instead of typing the whole JSON data again, I'll just copy this from here. Now I'll come down. Now let me come down here. I'll copy this. I'll now come down. I'll hit on enter now. I'll now say data equals what? Equals I'll now paste now. You can see it now. Now I will scroll down now. Let me just scroll down. Okay. Now let me scroll down. Okay. Now let me hit on enter. Come down here. I'll now hit on enter. I'll now say what? To load into pandas now. Now say what? df equals what? pd dot data frame. Now open parenthesis. What do we name it as? What's our what? What do we name it as? What? We name it as data. Close parenthesis. Now I'll now hit on enter. I will now print open parenthesis df dot what? Head. Open parenthesis, close parenthesis. I will now close this first parenthesis now. I will now run this, control enter. Now let's scroll down now. Let's see what we have. You can see it now. This is our what? It will start from 0. Don't forget. This is our ID. This is our name, the email, the address we actually use, and the what? And the company. Now you can see it now. Assuming we have more than this now, let's say like 10 ID, 20, 50, and so on. Now we have. So it will actually bring out all the what? Information starting from 0. For instance, now that if it is 50 now, that will be starting from 0 to 49. Now you can see the address now. The address and the company now, the company information now, they are still in the nested dictionaries. Now, how can we actually what? Remove them from a nested what? Dictionary. Now, we don't actually want to leave it like what? Nested what? Dictionary like this. Now, we can actually what? Flatten the what? The nested JSON. How can we actually do that now? We'll use this what? Use this JSON underscore normalize now to do it. Now, I will hit on enter. I will now say from pandas import JSON underscore normalize. If I run this now, I will now hit on enter. Let me scroll down so that we can see everything well. Now I will now what? Flatten this nested JSON now. I will now say df underscore flat equals what? JSON underscore normalize. Open parenthesis. Now what do I want to normalize? The data. I'll close the parenthesis. I will now hit on enter. I will now print open parenthesis df underscore what? Flat dot head. Open parenthesis, close parenthesis, close the second parenthesis. Now I will now run this. Now control enter. You can see now this is the ID, this is the name, this is the email, the address, the street, and what? The address dot what? City. Now let me scroll down. Okay, you can see it now along with the zip code, the company name. Now if you look at it now compared to what we actually have here now, so we've actually what? Removed the what? The nested dictionary that is what? That is appearing here. Now let me scroll down again. You can see it now compared to what we have before. That has JSON. Anytime we are working with JSON now that has nested objects like the address, the company, and so on. Now we can always what? Use the JSON underscore what? Normalize now to flatten it into a what? A clean table like this. The next thing now, let's actually see how we can select and rename columns now. To select and rename column, I will now hit on enter. I will now come here. I will say df underscore what? Clean equals what? Df. Now make use of these two parentheses, double quote. Now what are the column I actually want to select? Now the column I want to select are what? ID, close double quote, comma. Now double quote, name, close double quote, comma. Now double quote, email, close double quote, comma. The next thing I want to select is what? Double quote, address dot city, close double quote, comma. Now double quote, company dot name, close double quote, close these two parentheses. Now I will now say what? Dot rename. Sorry, rename. These are the what column I actually want to rename now. Rename, open parenthesis, column, columns equals what? I'll now make use of this parenthesis now. I'll hit on enter. I'll bring out the ID. Now, sorry, I'll bring out double quote, ID. Now close double quote, double column. Now I will now say what I want to change it to, double quote, user underscore ID, close double quote. I'll put a comma, I'll hit on enter. Now the next one now, double quote, I'll bring out the name, close double quote, double column. Now what I want to change it to, double quote, that's full underscore what, underscore name, close double quote. I'll put a comma, hit on enter. I'll now bring out the email, double quote, email, close double quote, double column. Now double quote, I'll now bring out the email underscore what, address, close double quote, put a comma, I'll hit on enter. The next one, double quote, address, address dot city, close double quote, double column. Now what I want to what, change it to, double quote, city, close double quote, comma, hit on enter. Now the next one, double quote, company, company dot name, close double quote, double column. Now what I want to change it to, double quote, company underscore name, close double quote. Now I will now hit on enter. Now I will now close this parenthesis first, now followed by this parenthesis. Now let's run this. Now I will now hit on enter. I will now print, open parenthesis, df underscore, this is what I'll print now, df underscore clean, df underscore clean dot head, open parenthesis, close this second parenthesis. Now I will now run this. Now control enter. You can see it now, everything looks perfectly well. This is the user underscore ID. That what we have here was what, ID before, so we've actually changed it to user underscore ID, full underscore name, email underscore address, city, and what, company name. Now the next thing we'll look at is how we can load a post in what, into pandas. Now to load the post into pandas, now I will now come here, I'll come up here, since we are still using this API. Now I will now copy this. Now let me just copy this. Now I will now come back here. Now I'll hit on enter. I'll now paste this. Now I'll fetch the, okay, now import request. I'll now change this user to what, to post. Now I'll come down here. Now what I'll print now, I'll change this. What I'll print now will now be data, this data. Now data. Now I'll make use of this parenthesis, double column. I'll bring out, let's say, like I want to see the first 5. Now I'll close this parenthesis. Now I'll now what, close this second parenthesis. I'll run this. Now control enter. Now let's scroll down. Now you can see now this status code means what, successful. We've actually said this. Now assuming we have error, now we can see error 404, error 403, error 500, probably the server something and all. Now you can see it now. So error 200, sorry, status 200 actually means what, successful. So this is the what, this is the first 5 of the what, of the data. Now if you now want to see, if I want to bring this in a table so that it can actually look neat in this what, in this form. Now let me scroll down and see this. Now you can see, so that we can actually see it. Oh sorry, I'm too fast. So that we can actually see it in this format. Now to actually see it in this format, I will now scroll down back again. I will now come here. Now I will just copy this. Now let me just copy this so that I won't be typing much again. I'll copy this. Let me come here, copy. Now I will scroll down, I will now paste. Now the next thing I will now do is that I'll import request. I'll also what import what pandas as what as pd. Now import pandas as pd. I will also run this. Now the next thing I will now do now, before I will now print this first, print status code. Now print status code, I will now delete this. Okay, let me just leave this. I'll leave this, I'll hit on enter. I'll now come here, I want to convert it to a table. Now I'll now delete this. I'm not printing this now. I will now convert. Let me just say now convert list of what they are in a they are in a dictionaries. Now I'll now say convert list of dictionaries to data frame. Now I'll hit on enter. I'll now come down, now say df equals what pd. That's what I will use to convert it now. Dot data frame open parenthesis. What will I convert now? This data. Close parenthesis. Now I'll run this now. Control enter. You can see now the status code is actually was successful. Now I want to see the header. Now I'll now print open parenthesis df dot what head open parenthesis close parenthesis, close the second parenthesis. Now control enter. Now let's see it. Now let's scroll down. You can see it now. You can see it's actually look more what beautiful in this format when it's in a table than what we actually have earlier. This is the user id, this is the id, this is the title, and this is the what body. Now the next we'll be discussing is the what is the put versus patch. Now we've actually discussed the user, the post. Now we said the post is what is used where we want to create something what new in the API or database. That means creating a new data. For instance, now maybe a new user, a new order, or new product, and so on. Now let me just see, let's see one more example on this post now, how we can actually create it now. Now I will just import request. I'll run this now. I'll hit on enter. Now this is for the post so that we won't mix it up. Post. Now post. Now hit on enter. I'll bring this down now. I'll hit on enter now. I'll now say url equals what. Now I'll come up here now. I'll copy this url. Let me just come down a bit. I'll copy this url now. I'll now scroll down back again. I'll paste this. Now to paste this now, I'll now change this user to what? To post. Now I'll hit on enter. I'll now come down here now. I'll now say new. I want to create a new post now. New underscore post equals what? I'll make use of this parenthesis. This parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I want to see the word double quotes user underscore, or let me just say user id, close double quotes. Now double column. Now I'll bring out 1 comma. I'll hit on enter. Now double quotes. I want to see the title, close double quotes, double column. Now for the title, now I will now say new post from API, close double quotes. I'll put a comma. I'll hit on enter. Now the next one, now I'll now say body, double quotes, double column. Now for the body, now I'll now say double quotes, this post this post was, that's what I want to use for the body, was created using Python, let's say Python post, or let me just leave this in capital letter, Python post request. Now double quotes. Now I will now what, hit on enter. I'll close this parenthesis now. Now hit on enter. I'll come here and now say response equals what, request dot post open parenthesis URL comma, now JSON equals what, new underscore post close parenthesis. I'll now hit on enter. Now I'll hit on enter. Now I'll now print. What am I printing? Open parenthesis response dot what, status underscore code close parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I want to print another thing again. Print open parenthesis response dot what, JSON open parenthesis close parenthesis, close this parenthesis. Now let me run this. Now let's print this. Control enter. Now let's see what we have. Let me scroll down. You can see now 201. The user is 1. The title is what, new post from API. The body is what, this post was created using what, Python post request ID 101. So what we did now, we've actually created a new record. Now the next thing we'll look at is what, is the put. Now this put actually talks about what, replacing entire record. So we use it when we want to what, update or replace the full object. So when we want to use it now, we must send all field, otherwise they will be what, they will be overwritten. Now let's see an example of this put. Now let me just say put. Now I'll hit on enter. To see an example of this put, I'll now come here and now say URL equals what, I'll paste this. Now for this, now I will now change this to what, I'll change this to post. Now let's say /1. Now I'll hit on enter. I'll now say what, update underscore what, underscore post equals what. Now bring out this parenthesis. I'll hit on enter, double quote. Now bring out the ID, double quote. Now I'll now bring out double column. I'll bring out 1 for the ID. I'll hit on enter. I want to make use of the word user ID, double quote, double column. Now for the user ID, I want to use 1 also, comma. I'll hit on enter. Now for the title, that's the next thing I want to bring out. Title, close double quote. Now double column. Now for the title, now I'll now say double quote, updated title. That's what I want to use for the title. Close double quote. I'll put a comma, hit on enter. I'll now bring out the body, double quote, body. Now double quote, double column. Now for the body, now say this is, and sorry, this replaces the whole post. Sorry, this replaces the whole post. Now close double quote. I will now hit on enter. I will now close this parenthesis. Now I'll close this. I'll hit on enter. I'll now say response equals what, equals request dot put open parenthesis. I'll bring out the URL, comma. Now JSON equals what, update underscore post, close parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. Now I will now print what I want to print. Open parenthesis, response dot status. I want to see the status of it, status underscore code, close parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I'll now print again. Print open parenthesis, response dot what JSON, open parenthesis, close this parenthesis. Now before I run this, now let me just put a spacing here. Let me hit on enter once. Okay, for this also let me put a spacing here. Now let's run this now. Sorry, control enter. You can see it now. This 200 means what is actually successful, assuming in a situation whereby we have what 400. So that actually means what error. So you can see it now. This is how to make use of the what to make use of the put. We've seen how to use the put, the post, and also the user. Now the next one we'll look at is the what is the patch. Now the next thing we'll be discussing is the patch. Now patch is used to update a part of a record. It is used when we only want to update one of few what fields. Now the rest of the record will stay unchanged. Now let's actually see an example of how we can use a patch now. Now to use a patch, I'll bring my cursor here now. I will now say what URL, or let me just scroll up now and copy the URL, the previous URL we are using now. I'll just copy this that has what post. Copy. I'll scroll down back. Now let me delete this. I'll paste. Now that's the URL we are still using. Now I will now hit on enter. I will now say what patch underscore post equals. Now use this parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I'll now say double quote title. Now close double quote, close double colon. Now what do I want to title now? Double quote. I will now say patched what title only. This is what I actually want to change. I will now hit on enter. I'll close this parenthesis now. Now I'll hit on enter again. I'll now say response equals request dot patch, open parenthesis, URL comma JSON equals patch underscore post, close the parenthesis, hit on enter. Now the next thing I will now do now, I'll print open parenthesis. I'll now say response dot status underscore code, close parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I'll print again. What am I printing this time around? Response dot JSON, open parenthesis, close the second parenthesis. Now I will now print now. Control enter. This 200 is for the word status code, which is actually was successful. Now assuming we have 404 now, that means what error. That means it's not actually connecting with the what with the URL of the what of the API we are using. And you can see now we have the user ID, which is one, the ID, the title, which we actually what change to what patch title only, and we have the body. You can see now that's how to actually make use of a what of a patch. We only update the title while keeping the what the body and the user what unchanged. So this patch now is just like editing one cell in a row, while put is what is like rewriting the whole row. Patch is what editing one cell in a row, while put is what is like rewriting the whole row. Now the next one we'll be looking at is the delete. This delete now, what we actually use delete for is to what? Remove a record from API or database. Now it's just like we had, for instance, now we want to delete a customer, or we want to remove an order or cancel a transaction. So how can we actually do that now? To do that now, we'll make use of this what? Delete. Now to now delete now, I will now come back here again. I will just say import. Make sure you have an internet whenever you are doing this. Import request. If you haven't if you haven't installed this request before, you just say what? Pip. That's the what? The pipe what? Install request. Now you run it. So I've actually installed mine. Now import request. I'll now bring out the URL again. Equals what? I'll paste. That's the URL. Now I'll now hit on enter. I hit on enter again. I'll now say response. I'll bring out the response equals what? Response equals request dot what? Delete open parenthesis. What am I deleting? The URL. Close parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I'll now print open parenthesis, double quotes, status code, double column, double quotes, now comma. I'll now say response dot status underscore code, close parenthesis. I'll hit on enter. I'll now print again, print open parenthesis, double quotes, response double column, double quotes, comma, response dot what? Text, close parenthesis. Now I'll print this now, control enter. Let's see what we actually have. You can see for the status code, which is 200, which is actually successful now. This response now, it means what? Why we have this is that we've actually what? Delete this what? This. Server confirmed the deletion, which is why we have this 200 now. Since this what? API is not a real API of what? JSON placeholder. We are just making use of it for what? For learning purpose. Now, nothing is actually what? Deleted. In a real API, once we run it like this, the record will be gone. So it will not, once we fetch it back again, it will not actually bring out anything. So that's how to what? That's how the delete actually work. That will be all for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll be discussing using the API key. See you in the next lesson. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.